Hello, everybody. My name is Matthew Wiseman. I have the absolute pleasure of being the Chief Executive Officer for BAFTA at Los Angeles. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for letting us into your homes for a little while. During this year, when maintaining connections has been as vital as ever, we are delighted to be collaborating with the African American Film Critics Association and with Netflix for today's event. So thank you for being here. If you're not a BAFTA member and would like to learn more about who we are and what we do, please visit BAFTA.org. And with that said, thank you for being here. Stay well, stay healthy. And it's my pleasure to hand over to our dear friend, Gil Robertson. Gil, over to you.
Thank you, Matthew. Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this special sneak preview of the upcoming Netflix original series, Bridgerton. I'm Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Created by Chris Van Dusen and executive produced by Shonda Rhimes, Bridgerton is a smart and modern take on Regency England romance. It unveils the glittering, wealthy, sexual, painful, funny, and sometimes lonely lives of the women and men in London's high society, as seen through the eyes of the powerful Bridgerton family. We're joined today by the creator and the cast of Bridgerton to talk about how the series came to be and the importance of telling this story. But before I introduce you to the panel, let's take a look at Bridgerton.
Has anyone else read what Lady Whistledown has written of late? Do not tell me that is yet another scandal sheet. This one is different. This subject's my name.
My name is Lady Whistledown. You do not know me, and never shall. But be forewarned, dear reader, I certainly know you. The social season is upon us. We shall discover which young ladies might succeed at securing a match. Let it be known, if there's a scandal, I shall uncover it and share every last detail.
Now that's amazing. I'm happy to introduce my co-moderator today, Jazz Tanguay, who will be joining us in a second. I'm also incredibly excited to introduce today's panelists. Please welcome Chris Van Dusen, creator, executive producer, showrunner, and writer, Regé-Jean Page, Duke Simon Bassett, Phoebe Dynevor, Daphne Bridgerton, and Adjoa Andoh as Lady Danbury. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Hey, hi.
Thanks for having us.
Jazz, you want to get us started?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to be here today because Bridgerton it's just an incredible, beautifully done show. The characters and that development. I mean, honestly, like just sitting down, watching it in one sitting is like, oh my gosh. But Chris, let's go back to the beginning. Like, how did the project first come about?
Yeah, I was a writer-producer on another Shondaland project, Scandal. And as that project was coming to an end and I was looking for what I was going to do next, I knew I wanted to do something completely different than modern day political intrigue on Capitol Hill. And that's when Shonda told me about these books that she had. She told me about the Bridgerton books. And that night after we met, I took them home. I devoured the first one that night, the second one, the second night, and so on. You know, they really had every element that I love. They were funny, they were emotional, they were sexy, they were charming. There was this delightful family at the center of them. And to top it all off, it was about escapism for me. And escapism was was exactly what I was looking for at the time. And I saw the world of these books. I saw this opportunity to create a show that really married history and fantasy in a really fascinating, interesting way that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah. What made you want to put a modern twist on the story and the characters and bring it into, 2020?
Sure. Yeah. I love a good period piece. I love everything from the costumes to the sets and the locations. And there's this world is just so rife with conflict. There were so many rules that men and women had to follow at the time. But at the same time, I think period pieces are considered a little traditional and a little conservative. And that's not how I wanted Bridgerton to be. We really set out to turn the genre on its head and turn this, everything we love about a period piece and turn it into something fresh and topical and timely. With Bridgerton, I created the period piece I wanted to see and one I hadn't necessarily seen before.
What about the casting? How did you go about finding these wonderful actors?
We worked with an incredible casting director in the UK, Kelly Valentine Hendry, and we scoured together with her. We scoured the film, television, and theater scene, and we ended up with such an amazingly talented group of actors, a gifted group of actors. 3 of them here with us today.
One of the interesting things about the show is the racial composition, the fact that it's a multiracial universe, this version of it. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I think, we knew from the beginning that we wanted to make the show reflect the world that we live in today. We're set in the 19th century, but we still wanted modern audiences to relate to the show and to see themselves on screen no matter who you were. Having worked in Shondaland for so long, ever since Grey's Anatomy, that's what we do. We cast the best actors for roles in ways that represent the world today. And we knew we'd have that same opportunity with Bridgerton as well.
Phoebe, you play... Oh, sorry, Gil.
No, go on.
I was going to say, let's talk about the characters and how you each got into your role and who you play. So Phoebe, let's talk a little bit about Daphne, who you played. Who is she and who does she represent in the series?
Yeah, so Daphne is the eldest of the Bridgerton family. She's the first woman young woman to be out on the marriage mart. This is her sort of debut into society. So yeah, when we meet her, she sort of conforms to these old-fashioned social rules that obviously very much bounded women, and they had to go out and they had to find a husband, and that was their future. That's what they had going for them. So yeah, when we meet her, she's ready to do that. She's quite driven in that sense, and then we sort of watch her as these 6 episodes is sort of a coming of age, and we watch her as she sort of grows into her own, and also what I found the most fascinating is within that context sort of still managed to have a voice and to be able to say yes and no, and she's sort of still very much in control of her future, really, in a way, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. And Regé, you get to play a Duke Simon Bassett. Tell us about Simon and who he is.
Simon is a thoroughly complex, thoroughly wounded, tall, dark, mysterious, brooding kind of a Duke. He's very much this archetype of your dark and surly anti-hero and romantic kind of lead and figure of desire. And so he's a beautifully kind of mixed bag of things for me to play with and things that desperately need fixing over the course potentially of 8 episodes or more. And it's a fun journey to plug into, seeing how it manages fitting into a society that in many ways has never wanted him and that he in turn has decided he wants no part of. I think that's kind of him in a nutshell, a rather large nutshell, but a nutshell nonetheless.
And what about for you, Adjoa, playing Lady Danbury? I loved your character. So talk about what it was like playing her and who she is.
Well, I'm glad you love her. I love her as well. She is, well, for the period, she's quite an extraordinarily free woman. She's a dowager duchess, which means that she is the widow of a duke. So for a woman, as Phoebe was saying about her character, women at this time, their lives were very ring-fenced, truncated in many ways. And the dynamism of who they were as a person wasn't necessarily given its free rein. They were still, if married, the chattels of their husband, if not, the chattels of their fathers or their older male siblings. So what's exciting for me about Lady Danbury is she has no children, she has no husband, she has a lot of money, and she has a lot of power. She's friends with the Queen. I think what I really love about her is she has a real appetite for life, a real generosity. She doesn't suffer fools, but she can feel out people's fragility, and she leans into that. And so she makes lovely friendships with other characters in the show. She's friends with the Queen. She's friends with Daphne's mother, Lady Bridgerton, and she loves Simon dearly because she was a friend of his mother's. So there's so I think friendship and love and loyalty and just leaning into that extra power that she has available to her are real big drivers for Lady Danbury.
Yeah. What was it like getting a script like this? Because it seems like every romance, adaptation is Jane Austen. And, this wasn't. It was completely different and so refreshing. Phoebe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways in which I was so overjoyed to read the script. I, like Chris, was such a fan of that, of that era, of the Jane era and period dramas in general, and getting a script where, these women are very much confined to the reality of the time. However, they also all have agency in their own way, which was really interesting to read in that script. And also I think fascination for me, or what really made it quite fascinating, was seeing the female gaze that's so prevalent throughout the show, and the way in which Daphne's discovering her sexuality, which has been so hidden from her. She has absolutely no idea what sex or what romance really is. So all of this journey is her discovering that. And as I said, it is very much through the female gaze. And I thought that was a really interesting way of portraying. And it's such a different take. We've never really seen, as Chris said, that quite sort of one aspect of women at those times where, they were very sort of almost not non-sexual beings in a way, not really portrayed as having that appetite. So to be able to play that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Adjoa, what about for you, getting this script and seeing Lady Danbury on the page and knowing that this is the great character that you'd get to play?
Well, the script is full of zingers, what I call zingers. I grew up with Jean Plaidy and Georgette Heyer and all those historical romances. So that's where I learned my history, and that's where I learned about romance and possible sexual awakenings was all through my mother's historical romances, which I'd be secretly sort of sneaking off the shelves. So what this show is like that, but on steroids. It's got a sort of real 21st century page turning attention-grabbing aspect to it, so that the script, I mean, if you could have been at our read-throughs, the read-throughs were fantastic. The energy and the joy and the buzz and the playing off each other was really exciting. And that's just, that's just sitting around a table. That isn't in location, in fabulous outfits, with horses and, massive crowds of people. That's just around a table. So the scripts were fantastically exciting. And you just knew that, Chris has got so much experience in making this really vibrant, exciting, addictive work. And so pouring all that into this sort of context of these characters. And as Phoebe says, there are these hugely dynamic women who are all sort of pushing their boundaries. And the dialogue reminds me, there's a real element of that His Girl Friday, the Cary Grant and the Katharine Hepburn. It's got that sort of muscularity to it, and that wit and that energy, and also it's got a real uplift and a joy to it. And I think we want the intrigue, and we want to know what's going to happen next, and we also want to have all our senses stimulated, so visually, aurally, intellectually, sexually. It's all sort of frothing along.
Oh my gosh.
Go on, Adjoa.
Yeah, telling us all her secrets now. I mean, Regé, what about for you? Getting that script, I mean, I don't know, did you do any of the romantic novel reading?
Not until I got the script. I mean, it was a real... and then I kind of devoured everything I could on the plane on the way back to work with it. That was a thrill. And the speed and the zip that Adjoa talks about was familiar to me. I was lucky enough to have been working with Shondaland for a couple of years previously, and was very lucky that so when we came to these scripts, it felt like coming home. I was aware of the speed, zip. Ad says the show is a little bit like a period drama on steroids. To me, it feels like it's been dipped in cotton candy. It's just funnier, faster, more glamorous, more colorful. And just a lot of fun. And so I think the early conversations that I had before signing on were very much about what is this project, and the opportunities were to do something exciting that hasn't been done in what people think of as period drama. Chris says that they're traditionally very conservative. There's kind of this walled garden of the way you're meant to make this that hasn't really moved on generically in the last couple of 100 years. And this was an opportunity to smash those walls open and have some fun with a period in high society that is insanely glamorous and insanely fun to explore the kind of dark crevices of, as cast by all this glorious light.
Love that.
And now we're going to take a look at our first clip, Call Me By My Name.
And you should know something about me, Your Grace. I will not have this go wrong.
You mean our ruse?
It's more than a ruse now. It is more than a negotiation. This is not just about finding the best match to impress Lady Whistledown, or the Queen, or any member of the ton. This is about a life, Your Grace. My life. I must finally take charge of it. I cannot afford to do otherwise. So I shall not have this go wrong. And if you are not in agreement, then you should tell me now.
I shall agree. On one condition.
You do not understand, Your Grace.
That you call me Simon. If we are truly to seem to be courting, if this is to be a match like no other, then you should call me by my name.
Very well. Simon.
Regé and Phoebe, how did Simon and how do your characters represent modern romance?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, as you can see from the clip, it wasn't often that they would call each other by their names or even, I mean, when they're married, often they didn't. So that was sort of the lovely thing about getting to play them, and also the reason why their story, I think, is so unique in the context of Regency England, because they've made a plan together, so there's no pressure there. They're not courting each other. There's no sort of pretense that they're putting on with each other. It's a genuine and actual friendship. But by the end of it, they really form like a real friendship and have a real sort of banter with each other, which is it's really lovely to play. And I think is what you don't see when sort of Daphne's with the other suitors, that she's not able to be herself. And I think that's the lovely thing about their relationship, is they are both able to be truly themselves around each other. And I think that's why they sort of, end up really falling for each other.
Phoebe, what themes in the show do you feel still ring true today?
In general, the themes, yeah.
Yes, in terms of romance and relationships.
In terms of romance and relationships, well, something that's quite interesting, I don't think I've talked about this much with the relationship between Daphne and Simon. There's something to be said about, I think men, and I think Regé-'s touched on this, but that sort of the brooding, mysterious stereotype that we've seen a lot in romance, especially, which is quite appealing to a woman, quite attractive to a woman. And I think, that is very appealing in some ways, but also that there can be sort of a darkness behind that. And what I find interesting about their relationship is they've obviously come from very different places, and Daphne is, really wants to, she's empathetic. She wants to know him. She wants to sort of look after him. She's got that female instinct, and it's lucky that Simon is a really genuinely good person, who has good heart and good intentions. But I think there's something to be said for relationships where that is not the case, and so it's exploring those themes as well, which are quite modern themes, because women always have that instinctual thing in them, I think. And also, it's it's love, and love. It's always the same throughout time. So even though we're filming in 1813, it's something that we still can relate to today. Love is love. People are people at the end of the day. So yeah.
And certainly in their relationship, they operate more as equals than some of the other relationships that are depicted in the show.
Absolutely. I think that is the core of what is important about their romance, is that they find, they find an equal in each other, which at the time is relatively revolutionary. Kind of when you're operating in an environment where you're meant to be almost buying a wife at the mart and joining families as a power move, there's something extraordinary about finding someone who can stand up to you at your level. I think both these characters are extraordinarily intelligent. They're used to being the smartest person in the room, and so finding someone who can go toe-to-toe with them, who is significant enough to be an equal partner on all levels, is hugely exciting to both characters. But also, as Phoebe was saying, allows this kind of dark, brooding, defensive archetype to have to become vulnerable, to have to discover how to offer more of himself in order to actually be able to love and be loved, in order to be stronger than he can be on his own. And that's the revolutionary realization that we work towards the whole series. I always think of Simon almost as more of an anti-hero. He's the adversary in this, that Daphne has to break down before she can reach the true heart of him.
Now, Simon, how did you do research for the role?
Yes. I mean, we were lucky enough. We were incredibly well prepared in terms of endless etiquette lessons, dance lessons, horse riding, boxing. But the joy is that it all kind of comes one. Everything is in communication. The first thing that I always do when researching any period role, even in the modern day, because that's just a period that we're familiar with, is look at what people are listening to, what the music is, what the literature is. And then from there, what the dances are like, what's the body language? How does that change depending on status? How does body language change depending on people's hobbies, like the horse riding or the fighting? And we had so much of this that a lot of that starts to do its own work. You know, you're in your riding boots all day and you're in these great big glamorous clothes. And so you start to relate to each other very differently. And we were lucky enough to have the source material of 8 books worth of a world already built for us. So we were spoiled in terms of research opportunities.
And Chris, how did the casting of Julie Andrews, the great Julie Andrews, as Whistledown, how did that take place? Where did that idea come from?
Yeah, Julie Andrews was at the top of our list to play the voice of Lady Whistledown from the beginning. And, you know, we offered her the part, never in a million years thinking that she would say yes because she's Julie Andrews. But she ended up, you know, reading the scripts and loving the scripts and falling in love with this world. And she signed on, and it's been such a delight working with her. She's been absolutely incredible. I think, you know, one thing I'm really excited for audiences to hear are the words that get to come out of Julie Andrews' mouth as Lady Whistledown, because she gets to say some of the most scathing things, but always in her bright signature Julie Andrews kind of way. So having her has been so much fun, and definitely those voiceover lines were some of, you know, the most fun I had writing the show.
I love her, you know, her gossipy, like newspaper, you know, society, you know, how she kind of spreads through society like wildfire sort of thing. What was the pitch? What did you tell Julie Andrews about Lady Whistledown?
Well, she was, you know, in a lot of ways, she is our one-woman Regency tabloid of the time, you know, and really, you know, her role, we're exploring the power of the written word through Lady Whistledown. We're seeing how she changes public opinion, how she shapes public opinion, much like, you know, modern day tabloids and social media do today.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we have another clip featuring Queen Charlotte.
Her Majesty requires an audience.
With me now?
Who is she?
Your Majesty.
Whistledown, I tasked you with unmasking the scandalmonger.
Believe me, I am intent on locating her, and I'm angry at myself for having not yet uncovered her identity. But I was thinking...
Clearly not fast enough. My patience has limits. Get me an answer. Your queen commands it.
Of course. Your Majesty.
Chris, talk about the inclusion of Queen Charlotte and why it was important to have her a part of this, particularly given her history and background.
Yeah.
Especially right now with everything that's going on with the actual royal family.
Yeah, you know, I would say Bridgerton, it has always been a show for a modern audience, and the themes and the stories and the characters themselves, there's a modernity to everything we're doing. Everything on the show is kind of infused through a contemporary lens and has a contemporary sensibility. And I think with, you know, it's a reimagined world, the world of Bridgerton. You know, it's not a history lesson and we're not a documentary. And I think our approach to race on the show is an example of that. You know, in speaking with many historians and actually collaborating hand in hand with the cast, I learned of this, you know, this idea that Queen Charlotte was England's first queen of mixed race. And that's something that a lot of historians believe there's evidence for today. And it's something that really resonated with me. It struck me because it made me wonder, you know, what could that have looked like? If that were true, what would have happened? Could she have elevated other people of color in society and granted them titles and lands and dukedoms? And I think that is where, you know, the Simon Bassett of the series, our Duke of Hastings, that's the idea beneath him. You know, it's this whole idea of marrying history and fantasy again in a really interesting, exciting way.
Chris, can you talk? So, obviously we've got the Bridgertons, who are one family, and then there's the Featheringtons. Can you talk about that family and, how you wanted? They're kind of like the perfect juxtaposition. They're new money. So talk about like how you wanted to portray them in contrast to like the very classy Bridgertons.
It's interesting. Yeah, I always refer to Bridgertons as this family of harmony, and the Featheringtons are kind of the discord, and there is, a very clear distinction between the two families. The Bridgertons are full of love and warmth, and even, the shooting style, whenever we're with the Bridgertons and inside the Bridgerton home, there's a lot of movement and things are lively, and we're really capturing that spirit of the Bridgertons. But then the Featheringtons, by contrast, there's not as much love in that home, and things are a little colder. And so the shooting style, again, there when we're with them, it's a lot more still and a little stilted. I wanted to show both sides and really show those differences, because to me the show is not just about the Bridgertons. It is about a world, and it is about an entire society, and we have an array of characters and an array of stories to tell.
Yeah. And Chris Bowers has done such an incredible job of that score, which we're, hearing a bit of in some of the clips. He's based in LA. Talk about working with him remotely and getting that score together.
He's been incredible. Chris has been amazing. We were able to work, due to the pandemic, we were able to work together remotely and virtually. A lot of times this kind of set up via Zoom and Google Hangouts. And we really, he was able to record the orchestra remotely. I believe all the musicians were separate and able to, do their own thing. And the sound of Bridgerton is, it's youthful and it's energetic and it's lively. Like everything on the show, we're very much rooted in the time of the Regency, but again, there's a twist to everything, and the volume is turned up on everything, and that goes for the music to the editing to the characters and the stories of the show.
Adjoa, Lady Davenport is everything, and you play her with such a flourish that is Lady Danbury, is everything, and you play her with such a flourish that is fun to watch. Talk about your preparation for the role, and particularly playing a woman who is in leadership as a woman of color.
Okay, so when we were filming, as you know, we filmed in the most terrific locations all around the country. And one of the places we filmed was at Badminton House. This is in Gloucestershire, in the country. It's the Duke of Beaufort's home. The Beaufort Hunt is one of the most prestigious in the country. The Badminton Horse Trials is one of the social events of the season. So badminton is a big deal. It's also about 6 miles from where I grew up. There were 3 black people in about a 50-mile radius. There was me, my dad, and my brother. And when we were filming at Badminton House, there's this scene. Lady Danbury invites Daphne to a sort of a women's soiree where there's gambling and drinking and just women being fabulous together. And we filmed this at Badminton House. So this is somewhere, I used to go to the Badminton Horse Trials. I loved horses when I was a kid. I used to ride all the time. And in the big hall where we were filming, there's this gorgeous painting of Queen Charlotte. And I had a moment in the room after we'd shot a scene. I was just looking at this painting and thinking, if I had been, when I was a little girl growing up in the 60s, 6 miles down the road in the middle of dairy country in England, in rural England, what would it have done for me as a little brown girl to have known that just 6 miles up the road in this house, which is the seat of, huge social events of the year, there was a painting of this woman who'd been Queen of England, who, as Chris said, many historians believe, was mixed race, and people at the time complained about her mulatto appearance and her thick lips and her wide nose. What would it have done for this little brown girl to have known that woman was there and that she too was part of society? So I think, this is rather long-winded, but I think for me there is an element of thinking about how integral people from across the world have been to the burgeoning society that we see in Regency England. I mean, Britain has always been a trading nation, whether it's been trading in people or goods or knowledge. It's always been a huge trading nation. And so I think for me, there's something rather lovely about being able to fold in that sort of sensibility into this story that is about love and romance and discovery and widening horizons. And I think I wanted Lady Danbury to sort of embody that aspect of confidence and moving forward and having a sense of one's self and one's worth and one's interest and one's value and one's beauty and one's dignity and all that sort of stuff. And I feel there's a sort of ramrod that goes through her. I feel she leads with her eyes. She's very sort of watchful and intuitive and knowing, and I wanted to give her a sense of fun, but also that sense of experience that makes you have a certain life wisdom, I guess.
Okay, and we have another clip from Bridgerton.
I would have expected more discernment, more understanding, more appreciation.
Lady Dan.
You allowed that young lady to slip through your fingers as if it were nothing. I understand that you believe such subjects as love and devotion, affection and attachment, you find it all trite and frivolous. But have you any idea those very things are precisely what have allowed a new day to begin to dawn in this society? Look at our queen. Look at our king, look at their marriage, look at everything it is doing for us, allowing us to become. We were two separate societies, divided by color, until a king fell in love with one of us. Love, your grace, conquers all.
Now, Chris, the novels upon which the series is based, there are several of them. Will subsequent seasons delve into the lives of some of the other Bridgerton children and their love escapades?
I would love that to be the case. You know, obviously we're just focused on the first season, and the first season follows Daphne, the eldest Bridgerton daughter, and her love affair with Simon. But we know there are 8 Bridgerton books, there are 8 Bridgerton siblings, and I would love to be able to explore love stories and romances for all the Bridgerton children, of course.
It sounds delicious.
Chris, how do you balance, we've got history, you've got all those details there, and then taking civil liberties and then just having so much fun with it through your casting, through the storytelling? How do you get that balance right?
I think, it wasn't such a stretch for us to take certain creative liberties on the show because it is a reimagining. And the show, because even though we're set in the 19th century, it is for a modern audience. So, like I said, we're not a documentary. There were not any actual real Bridgertons in 1813 Regency London, as far as I know. But it was working hand in hand with historians and advisors to really, capture those details. But also, we're a show based on 8 really delicious romance novels. So it's about romance, and I wanted it to be fun.
Yeah. Phoebe, I have a quick question for you. You've done period before. You did, you appeared in Dickensian. What was different about Bridgerton and, doing period drama this time around?
Yeah, I've done a fair few period dramas. But yeah, I think just basically what Chris said in a way is that it is a different, it's not, it didn't ever really feel like I was shooting a typical period drama. I mean, I remember quite vividly me and Jonathan Bailey, who plays Anthony, we'd constantly check in every week because we never really knew what we were filming. It was always like we were sort of stabbing in the dark and sort of playing with these things, and we knew who our characters were and we knew what they wanted, but we were never quite sure what the show was. We were so intrigued. I mean, it was exciting for me to watch the show because it was like the first time it sort of all came together. And also, as Reggie said, we would rehearse our dance sequences with modern music. We rehearsed some songs with some dances with Plan B, and another one we did with Stormzy. So we knew we weren't making your typical Regency drama or your typical period drama for that matter. And I knew that as well with the costumes, and everything just felt more vivacious and exciting and sort of like more it was faster paced. The way the scripts are written, the dialogue is so quick, so it was unlike, and it just, the way it moves, it just keeps going. It doesn't really, so all of that was different. And as I said, it was only until I watched it really that I sort of was like, oh, Chris has created this completely new world. Really, it's a brand new world in a way.
Okay, well, sadly that's all we have time for, but I want to thank Chris and the cast of Bridgerton. Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you all. Thank you to my co-host Gil Robertson, to everybody tuning in at home. And we hope you enjoyed this conversation and the special sneak peek and the conversation of Bridgerton, which is coming to Netflix on Christmas Day. So it is a perfect gift. You'll want to sit down, with your Christmas dinner and watch it all evening long.